Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. You are listening to a Yizkor sermon by Rabbi Rebecca Schatz.
For those of you who were here with us on Shmini Atzeret last year, you may recall that was October 7th. And so I walked into this sanctuary with a sermon in hand, and it became very obvious midway through the service that we weren't going to give this sermon, but that thankfully, not I, but Rabbi Kligfeld was going to speak to the moment and what was going on in our world. And after he spoke, I said to him, "It's okay, I can give this next year." And I said, maybe, because in the moment I wasn't actually sure that I would be able to give the same sermon again the next year, because we didn't know what was going to happen in the next year. So this is the sermon that I wrote for last year. And as I was telling Cantor Chorney earlier this morning, it's almost haunting that this is the sermon that I wrote for October 7th of last year, and how it now relates to the world that we've lived in for the past year and a few days. While in rabbinical school, I got a call from a family friend, Helene Brown, Zichrono Livracha, telling me that she had a gift for my first home. Helene was famous in my family for giving peculiar gifts. For example, each of my brothers received an electric razor for their bar mitzvah, which they still use very infrequently. I met Helene at her Wilshire apartment, and I was surprised to see it was nearly empty. Helene, full of life and still with this crass, piercing humor, seemed to be preparing to move, or at least purge large items, by unloading what seemed to be a life of memories. I knelt beside her at a cabinet as she started to hand me, almost too quickly, case after case of pristine china. Fine dishware for my rabbinical school apartment. I was moved to receive something so special, and this gesture indicated to me quite clearly that she never intended to use this set again. Helene's family was moving her closer to them to be of assistance and extra care. My mind raced as I peeked at the china as if I was opening a treasure trove of memories from past Shabbat meals with a full family table, knowing quite well that it would sit in my current home and collect dust as I hosted my rabbinical school peers. I said a profound thank you and asked her to tell me a bit about the china before just removing it from her home. Expecting her to share something powerful and a story that would bring meaning to these saucers and cups, she said, "Rebecca, I nor any bacon has touched these plates in 30 years. So it became clear to me, as Rabbi Brau said in her Rosh Hashanah sermon, I was letting fear get in the way of love. Tangible objects that pop up in use on a daily basis, as well as special things that are taken out and admired on special occasions, lend a kind of immortality to loved ones we've lost. My dad says he can still smell his grandma's kitchen when making her fried matzah for us, his kids, and I can still smell my uncle's mothball fragrant home when I put on his UCLA sweatshirt. So certainly, they're not entirely gone. And perhaps in the emotional realms and in sensory memories, there is a greater permanence than in a beautiful old chair. So the question, is anything really permanent, is as difficult to answer as, is anything really temporary? When I think of the generations of our family that preceded me, the flood of emotions and memories that are punctuated by things that they've left behind, objects, rugs, furniture, handcrafted art pieces, jewelry. The objects confuse me regarding the questions of permanence and transience. We often talk about Sukkot as a celebration of the temporary, spontaneity, fragility, and of all of our senses. We know the sukkah might blow over or lose its leaves, or as I heard earlier this week, get eaten by squirrels. And we can accept that lovingly. In fact, a kosher sukkah is one we live in as we live in our regular dwellings. Sure, we are supposed to live in a sukkah as our regular dwelling, and yet the parameters for its blueprint feel sort of incomplete. The sukkah is a metaphor that demonstrates our desire to make that which is temporary more meaningful and longer lasting. A sukkah is a symbol for life, taking something so fragile and working to make it feel sturdy. Kol shiv'at hayamim adam oseh sukkato keva uveito arai. For all 7 days, a person makes their sukkah permanent and their home becomes temporary. The Gemara continues on page 28a of Masechet Sukkah. If one has beautiful vessels, they take them to the sukkah. If one has beautiful bedding, they take it into the sukkah. One eats and drinks and relaxes in the sukkah. We turn a fragile dwelling into a permanent space. And not just a space for living, but a holy space for finding happiness, or at least trying, as the mitzvah suggests. The sukkah can be this precious symbol for life, filling up time and space that is finite and fragile with moments and memories and things that help us feel permanent. Rabbi Lu, in his book, This is Real and You Are Not Prepared, says, a sukkah exposes the idea of a house as an illusion, the idea of a house that gives its security, shelter, haven from the storm. But no house can really offer us this. No building of wood and stone can ever afford us protection from the disorder that is always lurking all around us. In the sukkah, a house that is open to the world, a house that freely acknowledges that it cannot be the basis of our security, we let go of this need. The illusion of protection falls away, and suddenly we are flush with our life, feeling our life, following our life, doing its dance, one step after another. We are to make our sukkot into our permanent homes for a week, but the nature of the fragile structure is that we are more aware of the intricacies of life around us. When we are going about our everyday and breathing deeply, exercising efficiently, working hard, caring strongly for loved ones, we might forget that we are temporary and that we are fragile. However, when standing at graveside, or celebrating a bat mitzvah while looking into the eyes of a great-grandparent, in those moments of devastation or great elation, we are exposed to the elements of life, a fragile structure that we live to make permanent. A fragile structure, a sukkah, is pretending to be a permanent home to celebrate and find joy in the face of uncertainty. For those of us who have lived in places that have hurricanes or hard rain or cold conditions during Sukkot, we know that being joyful in an outdoor structure can be quite hard. The sukkah won't guard us from any of that. So why did the rabbis prescribe that we be joyful in these liminal homes? Perhaps it is that each of us is an in-between. They wanted us to focus on what makes a happy home if we are lucky enough to know of one. The people, the food, the ritual, the memories shared, the way we find happiness and satisfaction in decorating. How can we be building structures focused on living out our legacy, rather than wondering, what was I made for? And yet calling a sukkah permanent, though halachic, is kind of silly, considering that you put it up for a week, never remembering which pole goes where, and then you return it to its remarkably compact storage to wait until next year. Rabbi Akiva Weisinger teaches, we are tashvu ke'ein taduru, sitting in the sukkah in the manner in which we dwell in our permanent homes. And we dwell in the sukkah in a manner of keva, of permanence. Though the sukkah itself is arai, is temporary. He continues, there's no attempt to deny the fact that this is a temporary structure. No demand to actually move into the sukkah, but to sit in it. Ke'ein taduru, like the way you dwell. You are sitting in a temporary hut, fully cognizant of its temporary nature, but you are relating to it as if it is permanent. We are commanded to treat a temporary object with permanence. Are we meant to remain cognizant of our temporariness, aware of our limits? Are we meant to shed the hubris of permanence and recognize the fullness of humility and fragility? We are living life, our most temporary reality, in a state of permanence because if we didn't, we would not live moments fully or with joy. We are not immortal, but we often live life as we are. as if the end is not going to come, which absolves us of the fear that death brings in the face of loving life. However, like a sukkah, we must live in a state of permanence, but accept and acknowledge the fragility of our days. This is why grief, even if death comes at the end of a long, happy life, is devastating and often feels surprising, because we blessedly live life as if we will be with those we love forever. That which is humble, fragile, and impermanent is not guaranteed a timely end. And indeed, we grieve dearly for those we've lost, whether in old age or younger, whether expected or unexpected, passing easily or with some difficulty. We invite ushpizin into our fragile sukkahs. They might be ancestors from our Torah, from our lives, from our history, from our DNA, who fill the sukkah with memories and stories and values. Yizkor, and moments of thinking of loved ones by sitting with them in our hearts and minds, is a form of ushpizin. We bring those we want back into our homes to join us in our sukkah. We are bringing those who we would want to remain forever permanent back into our hearts and behind closed eyes so we can feel them again with us, because we are all temporary. Even in the fragility of life, we try to make memories permanent. What if we lived life facing fragility, confronting the uncertainty of our own impermanence? Would that make our sukkah fall down, or will we just appreciate it that much more while it was standing? Later this year, we hope the Beth Am will have a series called Living Life in 5785 that is all about living in the fragility of our impermanence. We will gather together as a community to discuss ethical wills, fill out advanced directives, give tools for having the talk with loved ones of all ages, train those interested to join our vibrant Chevra Kadisha, and unveil our TBA funeral package. Yizkor is a reminder to remember. The friends, family members, teachers, and community who are now our ushpizin, visiting us in our own fragile structures that we continue to try and make permanent. Rumi wrote this poem, The Guest House, about our ushpizin, and I want to read it for you. This, being human, is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, a momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Build your life like you build your sukkah. Fragile, yes, but full of pictures of life, blessings for joy, ushpizin to bring memories and recollection of values to hold, and awareness of the elements around us that can help us stand strong to make us fall at any moment. Life is living permanence in the reality of the temporary. As we go into this Yizkor service, I hope you can invite your ushpizin into this moment. Conjure up their faces, hold their hands, feel their hug. They are helping us remain grounded in living life in a state of permanence, even though their memory is a harsh reality of our temporary moments on this earth.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.